Do any of you recognize this? This is the little book I wrote years ago. Wealth, Money, Finance, Global Restructuring, January 2020. Now, when you dig into it, the astrology behind it links back to, I think it was September, October, November, around that time, 2020, when we had this massive convergence that hadn't happened, anything similar for thousands of years. And primarily we had Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto converging at 27 degrees. Guess what? The United States is born with Pluto retrograde 27 degrees. That's very, very important for the history of America, for the phenomenon of America, for the birth of America, and for the Pluto return of America, which is where we are today. Some of you know that we have Mercury, then we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all retrograde right now. So we're getting taken back to have a look. And wouldn't you know, if we go to the ephemeris, you will see that Pluto is retrograding at 28 degrees right now, and it's going to hit the 27 degree mark. Can you see how slow things move when you were talking about Pluto? And here we are, I am here on my little channel. I've been talking about this thing for years, long in advance of 2020, and here we are 3 years later after this date, okay? January 2020. It's actually 3.5 years later, even more. And what's happening, what we're witnessing, whether you like it or know it or not, we're seeing a rehash of everything that happened around January 2020 at that great convergence. 27 degrees Pluto along with Jupiter and Saturn conjoining at the same time. Only now it's very, very obvious. It's the same thing that happens when you watch a very, very big movie and then you forget about it for a while, and then you watch it again because you think, wow, that was just incredible. That was a historical movie. I need to watch that again. And you discover a lot more on the second time around that you view it. And that's what I feel is happening right now, is that 3.5 years later, after this date, okay, January 2020, we're now seeing in much more detail in real time what actually happened at that moment. In my interpretation, what happened at that moment, it's like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Okay, so there's Pluto. Okay, tiny little Pluto. It has an elliptic odd orbit. It doesn't look like that here, but it does. And the way there's different analogies in the way people see it. I saw it as like a bomb, the dropping of a massive bomb, unlike anything we've ever seen before. We had nuclear bombs in the very early days of discovery of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and the early days of atomic bombs and things like that. And then all sorts of things like bioweapons, with Neptune. Very, very clever, advanced technological weapons with Uranus. But the really, really powerful bomb was a combination of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto energy that we've learned over the last about 130 years in terms of weaponry and war. And this particular weapon was a bioweapon. Some of you may remember that massive bioweapon that was dropped onto the whole of planet Earth, and it's still propagating all over planet Earth today like a massive toxic slime. And the first iteration of that bombing has already played out its course. Imagine the bomb drops. It goes and it sends out a massive slow motion ripple effect across the whole world, and everyone's going, ah! They're screaming, ranting. You gotta hide for cover. You gotta get a certain little needle up in your arm. You gotta take this pill. You gotta do what the government tells you to do. And there's a lot of death and pain and suffering and misery and chaos. And of course, that was the plan. But now we're seeing here, 3.5 years later, they're effectively telling you in the mainstream that they're going to drop another bomb. It's another version of the same one from earlier, and we all know the playbook for how this works out. Everyone goes, everybody complies, everybody gets their, their treatments, and then the world goes back to a state of controlled demolition, as organized by the folks, the global elite type folks. I'm trying to talk in code so I don't get into too much trouble. But anyway, the thing is, it's very much like headline conversation right now in mainstream news, and there's a lot more substance behind the subject now because we've lived through all this for the last 3.5 years. But now Pluto is retrograding all the way back, basically 2.5 degrees back to 27 degrees Pluto. So what do you expect? In other words, everything is exactly as it should be. And why is that so? Because it can't be any other way. The retrogrades are basically exposing anything and everything that can go wrong will go wrong. So guess what's happening? It's all going wrong, and you can see it live in real time. It's a spectacular movie when you think about it. Now, I'm mostly on the sidelines observing, and I'm just offering comments that I share with people, and I hope it makes sense to people. But please expect that things are going to get a lot worse. I'm just offering my opinion because I don't see how it could be any other way. A lot of folks are learning like, we've got to find a way to live around all this, let's say, global agenda. Because there's a lot of people like myself, I don't want to be a victim of that global agenda. Some people think it's all about mass extermination, a global die-off, eugenics, all these very disturbing, creepy things. But in some ways, of course, it makes sense. There's a lot of arguments that you could say, well, we're radically overpopulated. We got to find a way to depopulate. All those kinds of stuff. There's tons of stuff on YouTube about all that, so you can just gorge on whatever you want. I'm just offering a comment and trying to correlate this directly with the astrology of the moment, okay? We're heading there in the next few months. Pluto, 27 degrees. It's going to be the same title, again, Global Restructuring, number 2, 2023. Thank you for listening.